Welcome to my ranking of films that came out in the year 1999, or at least the ones that I've seen. And I can now reveal I have seen 22 films from this particular year, and I'm going to be ranking all of those today from worst to best. The top 2 will be going through to the eventual grand final of 100 films, where I will be declaring once and for all what the greatest film of all time is. But for now, let's concentrate on 99. I will quickly say that this is not the greatest of years quality-wise. We're going to have to wade through a lot of dreck today to get to the good ones. In fact, don't expect me to speak positively about any of these films until around about the top 10 part, I guess. The top 3 films, though, are really excellent. In fact, the film which came third today, very, very unlucky not to go through to the grand final. But let's jump into it, and we'll start with the film that I consider to be my 22nd and therefore least favourite to come out in 99. This is a film about 2 rich sociopaths who decide to break the heart of a girl from their school for no real reason. I bought this on DVD around about the time that DVDs were really fresh and new, and just the concept of buying a DVD was really fun, regardless of what movie you were getting. I mean, it was kind of like, look, I got a DVD today. It's got special features and everything. It's got an interview with the prop guy, and it's got a trailer on it. This phase didn't last particularly long. By the time it was over, though, I had Cruel Intentions on my shelf, at least for a little while. I don't get this film. I don't get what it's going for. It's not funny. It doesn't really work as a drama. The 2 main characters are just horrible. It's not really a thriller. It's not sexy. I mean, this film's famous to a certain extent for a lesbian kiss, but so what? And the ending's just a bit all over the place. I mean, Ryan Philippe's character... I'm giving spoilers away here, I don't care. Ryan Philippe's character dies quite randomly when he's crossing the road, okay? And the worst person in the film is Catherine, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar. She gets her comeuppance in the last scene. I think we're meant to all cheer at this point. But her comeuppance is basically being exposed to all her classmates as the person she really is. But I'm thinking to myself, so what? She's clearly of an age where she's going to be leaving school very soon, so she can easily just move into another life and just carry on regardless. So I don't know. I don't... Explain it to me. What is this film for? Who is it for? What's the point of it? I don't get it. This is the second of the Austin Powers films. I didn't actually get to talk about the first one in the year that it was released, because in 97, I think it was, there were 33 films that I'd seen, so I had to leave some of those films off the ranking. Austin Powers 1 was one of those films. When it comes to Austin Powers, there was always going to be a battle to be fought between my love of James Bond films and my general dislike for comedies. And I think the general dislike for comedies just about won out, because I'm not really into these. I borrowed all of them off a friend back in the noughties. I sort of enjoyed the first one. I laughed a few times. It was fine. I understood all the jokes. I knew what they were going for. I put the second one on, not because I was desperate to watch it, but I had way more time on my hands back in my 20s. It's much different now when I've got 3 kids, but time back then just seemed to be infinite somehow. So I watched the second one. I thought that one was all right as well. I actually put the third one on Gold Member for about 20 minutes, but I didn't laugh once in 20 minutes, and I turned it off without watching the whole film. I was done by that point. I think I would like these better if they were just condensed into one really good 2-hour film. I don't think this needed to be a massive on-running series. And I think at one point they were talking about just keeping it going, 4, 5, 6. I don't know why they stopped in the end. Box office, maybe, for the third film not being great. I don't know. But yeah, I'm just not into it. I'm sorry, Mike Myers. Good effort, though, especially with the first 2. I rented this one just after it came out. I actually moved out of home, though, in 99, so I can't remember if this was a me and dad rental or whether it was something I watched once I got to uni. I don't recall. The film itself is a crime caper starring Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones. The trouble is the age gap between those two was so big that there was no great chemistry on the screen, and in terms of the plot, there's just too many twists in it. It's like Wild Things from 1998. Just when you want the film to settle down and stick with a certain route that it's set up for itself, it decides to twist again and give you something else, some new character motivation that we didn't know before. So yeah, this was a film that I quickly forgot after I saw it. In fact, I had to go on Wiki the other day just to remind myself of the exact nature of the plot. All I could remember in my head was Sean Connery, Catherine Zeta-Jones, some sort of thief robbery thing, and it wasn't very good. I saw this at the cinema with a couple of friends, so we were actually 3 people going to watch Three Kings, but we didn't feel like 3 kings when we came out of the cinema, more like 3 mugs for parting with our hard-earned cash on this movie. Tell a lie, actually, one of my friends did enjoy it. He was talking excitedly on the way home about some of the scenes that he'd really liked, but the other 2 of us were kind of like, yeah, whatever, mate. The trouble is, this film is more like a black comedy than a serious war film. If I watch something that's taking place in Iraq or Afghanistan, I want to see the serious side of that world because I'm genuinely interested, you know. I don't want to see cows getting blown up. That's the only part of this film I remember, when a cow steps on a landmine, I think, or something, and bits of cow are coming down on them, and it's like, really? So, yeah, I'm not into this film. I think George Clooney could do a lot better. This was barely 2 years after Batman and Robin. I mean, had he learned nothing? So for the second film in a row, we have one with the word 3 in the title. I did not plan it that way, complete coincidence. 3 to Tango is a romantic comedy about a guy played by Matthew Perry who fancies a character played by Neve Campbell, but she thinks that he's gay for some reason, but he doesn't correct her because he thinks to himself in his head, well, if she thinks I'm gay, then I'll get to go into her friendship circles as one of the girls sort of thing, and that means we'll get to do all this hanging out, and maybe then she'll fall in love with me or something. I think that's the general gist of his thinking. It's a flawed plan, to say the least. I didn't really enjoy the movie, you know. Towards the end, I believe he comes out as a straight man and maybe they get together. I don't know. I don't care. The story of how I saw the film is of more amusement to me looking back, because at uni I was dating this girl and our hometowns were quite far apart. So when it came to the summer holidays, I could only afford to go and see her once in 2 months, and it would only be for like an afternoon sort of thing, because I certainly wouldn't have been allowed to stay around at her house. So in order to maximise the amount of time that I would get to spend with her, I took the first train in the morning at like 6 a.m. But this plan was more flawed than Matthew Perry's plan to go gay, because by the time I got there and we were hanging out, I was so tired. I mean, I was walking around like a zombie, and I think in the middle of the afternoon we decided to go and watch a movie, 3 to Tango, and I fell asleep for about 10 minutes in the middle of it. I was knackered, and I copped a bit of flack for this because she sort of whacked me awake and had a go at me like, this is the one day we're going to see each other in 2 months. And I was like, yeah, but I'm so tired. So I don't know, who was the bigger fool in 1999, me or Matthew Perry? You decide. This is a horror film which got quite a bit of traction back in the day. It was very popular for a while. I suspect that the legacy of it over time has probably diminished somewhat. In fact, when I look back to when it was released, I suspect that a lot of the people who were shouting from the rooftops about The Sixth Sense were probably people for whom this was their one horror film they watched across a 5-year span or something. I don't want to offend anybody, but I never used to think that this was particularly great. I mean, when you take the twist out of it, oh yeah, the twist. If you're of a certain age, you probably had at least one experience where somebody has said to you, oh, have you seen The Sixth Sense? Oh, there's a big twist at the end. Oh, it's a humdinger. You won't believe it when you see it. Will I? I mean, I'm pretty sure that when I was a kid, I read quite a few ghost stories that had the exact same twist that you see at the end of The Sixth Sense. It didn't invent that twist. I'm pretty sure of it. And once you take that out of the equation, you're just left with Bruce Willis talking to Haley Joel Osment a lot. And I don't know about anyone else, but when I see Bruce Willis in a movie, I want to see him jumping off rooftops with fire hoses wrapped around him. I don't want to see him getting ice cream with kids, particularly. This is a Stephen King adaptation. I have seen the movie and I have also read the book. Now, normally I would be able to tell you which I prefer out of a movie and a book, but on this occasion, I just find both of them really tedious. This is not one of King's best stories, it has to be said. It's about a guy who is wrongly put on death row and secretly he has healing powers or something. And there's also a prison guard character who has trouble urinating. I don't know. I don't know what King was going for with this. I mean, I love the man, don't get me wrong. There's so many of his books that I absolutely adore. I just don't think this was one of his best. I don't really get what his thinking was behind this. I watched the movie, honestly, and I got very little out of it. And I thought to myself, well, the book will be better. The book will sort it out. There's probably loads in the book that they left out of the movie. This is not going to be a problem. And I read the book and realised that, no, there's not really much else in the book either. So, yeah, this is one that I just kind of put to one side and think, well, you know, King did what, or has done, 70, 80 books. They can't all be brilliant. This is a film starring Eddie Murphy about a couple of guys who get sent to prison together when they're very young. And I think they spend about 50 years in this place before they escape when they're about 70, or maybe they're just released when they're 70. So it takes place over a very long period of time, but it's quite funny, this one, actually. A friend of mine brought it round to my dormitory room in uni, I think, and we watched it together. I think that's how it went down. I can't imagine that me and him picked this together in a video store, or I almost certainly would have blocked it. But yeah, it's pretty good. And there's one bit that I remember where Eddie Murphy's May is coming up with some scheme to escape, but he's not let Eddie Murphy in on this. And Eddie Murphy knows that this guy's planning something, so he's interrogating him. And the way he does it is absolutely hilarious. He says something like, I want to know what you've got up your sleeve. And his facial expressions and the way he's saying the words were just having me and my friend in absolute stitches. And there were some other parts of the movie that I laughed a lot at as well. So as comedy films go, I don't mind this one. Having said that, I've not seen it since that initial viewing. I saw this one at uni with a few friends of mine. As you probably guessed from watching the video up to this point, we're very much into my uni years now, you know, 99 to 03. So over the next 4 videos or so, you're going to hear me say a lot of things, probably like, oh, saw that one at uni, saw that one in my dormitory room, saw that one just after an exam, etc., etc. I'm kind of on the fence when it comes to American Pie overall, though. I don't love it, I don't hate it. I think the circumstances under which I saw it were probably the ideal ones for somebody like me, you know, with a bunch of friends, Saturday afternoon. I'd probably had a couple of drinks in me at the time. I certainly remember laughing at a few parts of it here and there. Other parts of it I didn't laugh at, like when he puts his dick into the cherry pie. I just found that completely stupid, you know. My favourite thing about the movie is the Shermanator character. I think he's absolutely hilarious and very believable as somebody who could exist in real life. You see, that's how my brain works when it comes to films like this. If I can identify with what I'm watching on the screen to something in real life, then I might find it funny. But if I can't, then I'm less likely to find it funny. I do not believe for one second that people actually put their dicks into pies in the middle of their kitchen. So that part I didn't find funny. The part where he comes twice in like a minute, when he's got the exchange student round, again, I don't really find that believable as a scene that could happen in real life, so didn't really enjoy it. But on the whole, I don't mind the movie. It's not something I would watch on my own on a Wednesday night, but if you're with other people and you've got some beers, you know, you might enjoy it to a certain point. It just goes to show how bad 1999 is that frigging Toy Story 2 comes this high in the ranking. I'll only watch these if my kids have got them on, but they're not bad movies, actually, to be honest. I mean, the first scene in this is pretty great. Buzz Lightyear, we think he's battling some evil villain called Zorg on another planet, but it turns out that it's just a video game we're watching. That's quite clever. And the overall story in this is quite good for a sequel. So Woody gets captured by a toy collector, and the other toys have got to go down this busy main road to eventually rescue him. But Woody then has the dilemma of, well, do I want to be rescued? Do I want to go back to Andy's bedroom, or do I want to stay with these new friends of mine who are like his buddies from the toy line that he was involved in back in the 1960s or whatever? We know the answer to the conundrum. I guess kids who watch this film do not. Shall I do a Toy Story ranking at some point? Because I've seen the first 3 movies. I'd only have to watch the 4th one and the new spin-off. So it wouldn't take that much effort. It would sort of be something different, I guess. I'll see if I run out of ideas first. This is another one I saw at the cinema when I was at uni. I saw it with my girlfriend of the time and my brother. Yes, the same girl who I would go on to watch 3 to Tango with, except I wasn't as tired watching Sleepy Hollow. It was during term time. I've not seen the movie since that initial viewing at the cinema, so I don't remember it very well. There was one bit in it which caused a bit of consternation with my girlfriend, because there's like a 7-year-old boy who hides under some floorboards, and there's like a demon knight thing on a horse, and this horse turns around, I think, because he can hear the boy, and it's sort of implied that this poor boy is killed off screen, and my girlfriend hated that. So we were talking about that a lot on the way home, I think. I don't remember hardly anything else about the movie, but you know what? I think if I watch this again these days, I might enjoy it a little bit more, because over the years I've got more into sort of gothic horror films and things, mainly because I watch a lot of Hammer films now, so something for me to think about. I could do with rewatching this one. This is a Pierce Brosnan-led film about a guy who comes up with some really elaborate scheme as to how he's going to steal some kind of really expensive painting from an art gallery, but it won't be easy because this particular gallery has got a world-class security system, but somehow Brosnan pulls it off. I think Rene Russo might be the love interest, but it's absolutely Brosnan's film, and this particular role is right up his street in terms of his particular acting style. There's lots of twists in the movie, but they feel more natural than the twists from a film like, say, Entrapment. But in all honesty, I've not seen this film for a long time. I just remember it being pretty good. This is a weird one because I saw it at the cinema with a bunch of friends at uni, and I remember having a really good time. I remember enjoying the movie. So much so that a few months later, when it was available for rent, I rushed straight out to get it, took it home, slapped it on, but to my surprise, I just couldn't get into it the same way second time around, so I turned it off after half an hour. You'd think this would be a rewatchable film because there's a big twist at the end of it, which, if you watch the film a second time, should allow you to have a completely different experience because you'll be seeing the film in a whole new light. But I just didn't want to, and I tried again for a third time a few years further on, and same thing happened. I just couldn't make it to the end. So I've come to the conclusion now that Fight Club for me was a one and done film that I enjoyed once in the cinema, and that's it. This isn't a great ranking today, is it? I mean, we're into the top 10 now and I'm still not gushing about these movies. This is the perfect chance, before we move on by the way, to say about Meatloaf, may he rest in peace, God bless his soul. He has a small part in this film. This takes place on an offshore medical facility where scientists are trying to create a cure for Alzheimer's. They have a drug ready to go, they just need to test it, so they test it on sharks, but it makes them really brainy, it has that side effect, so before long these really smart sharks are tearing down this facility from all angles and water's cascading in and the characters are really in a fight for survival. It's a good film, directed by Renny Harlin, who did Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and Die Hard 2. A lot of people have said that this is the second best shark film after Jaws. I've heard that a lot. I don't personally agree with that. In fact, I think Deep Blue Sea 2 and 3 are both better than this one, despite having smaller budgets. Not a lot of people will agree with me on that, but you know what? That's what you get on this channel. Aggressive, controversial opinions. I am something of a Star Wars fan. I have seen all of the films multiple times. I don't go crazy over them. There are franchises I like way more, but in terms of this first film, and actually what I'm going to say next could go for the whole of the prequel trilogy set, it's a colourful, enjoyable adventure. There's not much beneath the surface. I mean, I enjoy this film just for its 2 hours of glorious sci-fi imagery. There's not much there in the way of character arcs or story. All of that stuff is pretty poorly written, if I'm going to be honest, but I can still enjoy this film, and I have done on several occasions. I'm not going to talk about this one today because I'm not too far away now from doing a brand new James Bond ranking. The reason why I didn't do it straight after No Time to Die is because I wanted to rewatch the entire series, make my new ranking really fresh and up to date, have some really new perspectives on all the films. And in terms of those rewatches, I'm now up to Goldeneye. I've been watching roughly one a week recently, I'd say. I don't have time for more than that, and I don't think the Bond series is something that you should binge. You know, I don't think you'd get the most out of it watching 2 films a night over the course of a week and you know, that kind of pace. So at some point soon, I will be done and I'll do that ranking. I did do a James Bond ranking near the start of the channel, but that one was done with me having to remember some of the films from 3 or 4 years previous, this one is going to be a lot more fresh and up to date, like I said. This is a really good film. Mel Gibson at his absolute peak. He plays a thief who gets ripped off by his best buddy to the tune of $70,000, and this guy leaves him for dead. When Gibson recovers, he goes after his mate to get revenge and his money back, but this guy, played by Greg Henry, he's protected by like a crime syndicate, so Gibson's got to go through all these extra guys as well just to get to Greg Henry. So it sounds like an action shoot 'em up. It's actually more like an old style film noir that could almost be in black and white actually, and it's got a really bouncy soundtrack that fits the film like a glove. It's very darkly comic. It's sort of like a serious version of Lock, Stock at times, with all these different factions and characters converging on each other. And it's got a great cast. It's got Lucy Liu playing a dominatrix. She's very funny. And Chris Christopherson, James Coburn. The ending to this film is really clever as well. It's not a brutally violent ending with lots of people dying. It's just really satisfying and clever. So check this one out if you've not seen it. This is a sports film starring Al Pacino as a football coach who's trying to get his team to the playoffs or whatever. I can't remember their exact goal, but Pacino gives a very intense performance, as he always does. Cameron Diaz is in there as well. I think it really helps if you know a lot about American football to get the most enjoyment out of this. Now, personally, I did watch NFL for about 3 or 4 years in a row at one point, so I did get myself into it. And then I got myself out of it because I just didn't have the time anymore to sit down and watch it on a Sunday. So I've been out of the loop on NFL for a good 5 or 6 years now, I'd say. But if I watched this film today, I could still understand it perfectly well because of the fact that I did have that period of watching the sport. The film is, to an extent, carried by Pacino. I'm not sure how good this would be if it had some run-of-the-mill actor in his stead, but as it is, it's a very good film, it's a good drama, and check it out if you feel like you want to. I haven't seen The Matrix in a long time, but I do remember it's great. How I came to watch it is because my brother lent me the original trilogy on DVD. I watched the first 2, enjoyed both of them, and then I put the third one on and realised that it was one of those pirate copies that someone had taken in like a cinema. Now, regardless of where you stand on the ethics of that, I personally don't think it's right at all. I couldn't watch it anyway because the picture quality was so bad, so I turned it off. I did straighten my brother out over that, by the way. But to this day, I've still not watched the third film, and I hear that the third film is bad enough anyway without it being a really dodgy, pirated version. It probably needs to be seen in 4K just to have a chance of being good. At some point, I am going to do a full rewatch of this series. I'm going to rewatch 1 and 2 and then discover 3 and 4 and see what they're like. In terms of the first film, I think most people are sort of on the same side as each other with this. You know, it does have a great reputation. As to how you feel about the ones after that, I guess that's down to the individual. Although, like I said, when I watched the second one, I thought it was pretty decent, at least on a par with the first. So we've arrived at the film which has only just missed out on the grand final, and I'm very sad about that because Magnolia is a wonderful, wonderful film. It's about 3 hours long, I'll warn you now. It's a drama. It features all these different stories which are only connected to each other in the most vaguest of ways, and they don't converge towards the end, which makes this a very unique film. And they're very down-to-earth stories. They're very human stories, very personal. There's nothing overblown or overly cinematic in this film. It has an incredibly deep cast. I mean, just look at the cast list for Magnolia and you'll see loads of names that you'll recognise. And it's paced very well. I mean, early on in the film, we spend large amounts of time with each story, but as it goes on, we flick between the stories a lot quicker and it just makes the whole thing feel more dramatic. The soundtrack's very good. I just love this film. I don't understand why it's not more well known. Maybe because it's such a long film, people just aren't willing to give it a chance. I don't know. So check out Magnolia if you have the time. It's absolutely amazing, but it hasn't made the grand final, sadly. So let's move on now and find out which 2 films have made the final, and we'll start with this one at number 2. I saw this at the cinema with a friend of mine in the summer of '99. It would have been the very dying embers of my time living with parents. I can't remember what my expectations for this film were going into it, but they would have certainly been met and then some, because this was an awesome experience. This film tries to do a lot of different things and just about succeeds with all of them. It's a genuinely scary film for the most part, which is incredible given the tone of the film. And the characters are amazing. They're not just likeable, they're lovable, especially the main three. And the chemistry between the two leads, Rachel Weisz and Brendan Fraser, is absolutely on point. I mean, you're rooting for these characters to get together from a very early stage. Egypt looks amazing in the film. Arnold Vosloo's good as the Mummy. Looking back, it's sort of a shame that this film wasn't the one that they tried to create a monsterverse with, rather than the Tom Cruise film from 2017. Can you imagine Brendan Fraser's character crossing over into a Dracula film or a Frankenstein film? We can only imagine. But anyway, let's move on and find out which film has beaten The Mummy into the top spot this week. So let's find out what that is. So yeah, Blair Witch is my number one. This is a film which, within the horror community, sort of both loved and hated by many people. No prizes for guessing which side of the fence I sit on. I saw this for the first time in early 2000 on a rental, and the circumstances in which I saw it were absolutely perfect for this movie. It was very late at night. I had the lights off and I got into it so much. I mean, I was thoroughly creeped out by what I was watching. I had no idea what was going to happen either. Seeing these characters trapped in the woods and hearing all these strange noises, it was just brilliant. I don't think I'd even seen a found footage film before this one, but it certainly made me a lifelong fan of the genre. At some point, I think I would like to do a ranking video of my favourite found footage films. I think that could be a very good project for me. I'd get a lot out of that. I played a video game of Blair Witch on the PS4 3 or 4 years ago now. Very good game if you haven't played it. It's only about 15-20 quid, so give that a try if you like the Blair Witch movies. I wasn't really into the second one, I've got to say. Third film was better, but nothing will ever beat this original. For me, it is an absolute masterpiece. I gave it 5 out of 5 when I reviewed it, and I will always be a big fan, and I think it could do very well in the eventual grand final in this competition. Right, so there we have it. We've come to the end of my rankings for 1999 movies. There is one more question left to ask. So I've got 4 films written down today. One of them is Lake Placid. I'm so overdue watching that film. The Haunting, which was the Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones film, which didn't do that well critically, but I'm certainly curious to see it. House on Haunted Hill, which I guess is a similar film. And The Insider, which I actually rented not long after it came out, but I didn't end up watching it. I think somebody pulled me onto a night out when I thought I was going to be spending the evening in, and I ended up having to take it back before I'd seen it, and since then I've never even come close to watching it, so at some point I'd like to try that. Right, that's all for today. I'll be back soon with a rankings for the year 2000. Yes, we are done with the 20th century. So until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.